So today we are going to learn 3 prakim. B'ezras Hashem, we're going to review 3 prakim: Perek Chavav, Perek Chav Zayin, and Perek Chav Ches. And with this, we're going to start the topic of Simcha. Now, why are we discussing Simcha?
Because
the Baal Simcha is here. Very good. But why is the Alter Rebbe talking about Simcha in Tanya? We know that Tanya is not. If you look in Sifrei Musar, so you have some certain Sfarim which are devoted to Midos Tovos. Yeah, the Rambam, not that the Rambam is Sifrei Musar, but if you look at the Rambam in Hilchos Deis, to all the temperaments and the types of character traits that a person should have. And you have Sifrei Musar, you have Shara B'tachin, and Shara HaAnava, because B'tachin is important, and Anava is important, and Shara HaSimcha, right? You have all these different, Shar HaAtzlus, all these different types of, but Tanya is not that way. Tanya doesn't talk about Anava, Tanya doesn't talk about B'tachin. I mean, it's very possible that if you learn Tanya well enough, you'll derive your foundations for these areas also. But the Alter Rebbe doesn't directly address them, but he's going to devote over here 8 prakim to Simcha. Why does Simcha deserve this attention? Again, I'm not saying that Simcha isn't important, but we have to remember, what is the mission statement of Tanya? The mission statement of Tanya is the pasuk, Ki karev elecha hadavar miyoid beficha u'lavavcha la'asoiseh, which means, this is the axiom, the truism, that Torah is something which is practical for every single person. Torah mitzvahs. For a person, we look at Torah and you can get overwhelmed. How can I do it? 613 mitzvahs and so many thousands of mitzvahs derabbanan, and it encompasses every day and all the days, and it seems, to negate so many of my desires and my natural, my natural impulses and urges. How says Alter Rebbe? No, I'm going to give you a Sefer Tanya that's going to tell you that you might struggle, Taka, but you can win the struggle. That's what Tanya is, to tell you how, even though you may struggle, but here's how you can win the struggle at all times. And that's what we've been doing for the past 25 prakim, is we laid down the groundwork and the foundation for the paths, the 2 different paths that the Rebbe gives for how to win the struggle. And then in the last few prakim, as discussed in the last few weeks, we had the 2 paths which the Rebbe lays down. One we discussed last week and one we discussed 2 weeks ago, the 2 paths how to be victorious in our struggles. Now comes along the Alter Rebbe and says, I want you to know that there's one thing which is absolutely vital and crucial, because without that, you can't, it's not kikar ve'elecha davar miyot. Without that, it's not practical, it's not actionable, it's not something which we cannot win the struggle against the nefesh habahamis. And that is Simcha. I've given you all the tools that you need to defeat the nefesh habahamis, but without Simcha, those tools are not going to help you in any way, shape, or form, because Simcha is the fuel. Simcha is the fuel that keeps us going and that gives us the energy that's needed in order to be able to win the Milchama against the Yetzer Hara 24/7.
When it said Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od, it's when it's close to you, you have no excuse, you have to do. When it said Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od, it's karov elecha, so you cannot push away the cell. Right?
So how come Lashon Torah and Sinas Chinim is so hard these days? I think that's in the Torah and the Torah's Kikar.
Okay, one thing at a time. I'll get to Kikar ve'elecha hadavar miyoid is contrasted. If you look in the pasuk, it says, the Moshe tells the Yidden, Ki ha mitzvah is this mitzvah that I'm giving you. It's not in heaven that you can say, who's going up to heaven to bring it to us? It's not overseas. Today overseas is not a big deal. But back then, it's not overseas. They have to say, who's going to, who's going and is going to bring it to us? No, kikar ve'elecha. In other words, what Moshe is saying, I just gave you this whole Torah. Don't think that it's in the heavens. Don't think it's far away. Don't think it's unrealistic. Don't think it's an unattainable goal. Don't think so. But rather, you should know kikar ve'elecha. It's something. It's attainable. It's attainable. It's practical. So comes along. What's your name?
Ezra.
Comes along Ezra and says it's not so attainable. It's not so practical. Says the Alter Rebbe. That's why I'm writing you a sefer. If you thought it was attainable and practical, you wouldn't need Tanya. But you weren't here the past few weeks. So you missed out on it. So you're gonna have to go back and listen to the tapes, or start it yourself. The whole Tanya is telling you how to be able to win the struggle despite the temptation, and despite the fact that we like to speak lashon hara, and despite all those things. This is what Tanya is devoted to. It's telling us that we could win the battle 24/7. On a lighter note, not that it's so connected, but when people for the first time when they landed on the moon, what was that? 1969. When was that? Maybe some people here remember it. So it was 1969.
Sure.
I was on an elevator with Neil Armstrong.
That's
A year later.
Okay.
Exactly a year later.
Neil Armstrong.
I mean, by now, how many years later? Now we already know it's all a hoax. No one really landed on the moon. It was all a conspiracy now. But back upon him,
He said a famous statement. I forgot the statement.
one step for mankind. Anyways, so there was a Rav, I don't remember who said that now, when by Kiddush Levana, we have to stop saying, Kishem Shani Reikit Kenegdech Ve'eni Yachal and Gayabach, right? Kishem Shani Reikit, right? And just like that we're dancing over here, we can't touch you. So he says, we can't say that anymore. That's what it was, right? Rabbi Garin. Why? Because now we could touch the moon. Now we can land on the moon. So the Rebbe spoke about it, and the Rebbe said we can still saying it because all it means is where you're standing. You're saying Kiddush Levana, you're saying I'm dancing and I can't reach you. That's true, it's true. So therefore, if you're standing on earth and saying Kiddush Levana, you definitely want to say it. Now, if you're on the moon and making Kiddush Levana, I'm not sure exactly how the halachas would govern saying Kiddush Levana on the moon. Actually, people going into space and going up on the moon, that opened up many interesting halachic questions. Yeah. Even what's his name again? Ilan Ramon.
Raymond. Yeah.
Allah Shalom. So he actually
He asked
some. Yeah, he wanted to know when Shabbos is. He asked these kind of questions because, anyways. So I'm saying it, Kikara ve'elecha. It's not like doing 30 mitzvahs is not like jumping and reaching the moon. It's something which we could do, something that we could do. But says the Alter Rebbe, although I've given you the tools in the previous prakim, but everything depends on simcha. Because Kikari ve'elecha, this is very important to understand. When Moshe said Kikari ve'elecha davar miyoid, which as we said before, we translated Kikari ve'elecha means it's practical, it's attainable. It doesn't mean that it's easy. Okay, it doesn't mean that. Moshe wasn't saying, it's a piece of cake. We all know that's not true. It's not easy. It's hard. We could do it, but it's hard. And in order to do anything that's hard, the most important factor, the most important thing is that you have to be in a positive mood, upbeat, happy, excited, enthusiastic. And as the mashal that the Rebbe gives, you have two people wrestling with each other. If one of them is sad and upset and negative space and anxious and heavy, I don't mean physically heavy, but emotionally heavy. So even if he is the physically stronger one, he's going to lose in the wrestling match against if his opponent is excited and happy and enthusiastic. The same thing is when it comes in our Avodas Hashem. We have the ability to be able to win the struggle, but we need the fuel. And if the fuel runs out, if there is no simcha, and this is why the Rebbe talks about simcha, because simcha is so important in terms of our struggle on Avodas Hashem. Yeah, anava is important, all these things are important, but they're not directly related to the topic of Tanya. Simcha is directly related to the topic of Tanya. And
it's a big mitzvah.
It's not only a big mitzvah. See, that's the point. Bitachon is also a big mitzvah. Anava is also. The point isn't how great the mitzvah is per se. The point is that it is behind every other mitzvah. It is the secret to success in all areas of Avodas Hashem. With simcha, everything is attainable. Everything can be accomplished. Without simcha, you're going to stumble and you're going to fall because you're not going to have the energy. You're not going to have the chayas. And that's why the Heilige Rebbein of Karlin famously said, he says that atzvus, sadness, is not an avera, but what atzvus leads to, the worst avera can't lead to. That's because so you did an avera. It's a local flaw. That's a problem. I'm not condoning averas, but it's a local flaw. But if you're sad, that causes everything to crash. We all know. If we ever took upon ourselves a achlata, it's a commitment to do something, and Avodas Hashem, And if we failed at it, I think it's safe to say most of us in our life, have made achlatas, have made commitments, and at a certain point in time, abandoned them. And you think about the day when you abandoned it. What happened that day when you didn't do it? You decided you're going to learn Daf Yomi, for example, whatever it may be.
You feel miserable.
It was a day when you were upset, when you were angry, when you were stressed, when you were sad, when you were in a negative emotional space. And when you're in a negative emotional space, you don't have the energy to fight. And if you are in a positive emotional state, you're b'simcha, then you have the koyach to do anything. And that's the point over here of this perek, and that's why this is so important to know that how important simcha is. And the Yetzer Hara knows then, if it wants to get you to do Averis, so it could work and it could struggle and it can fight, get you to do one Avera, another Avera, but then there's the easier way. It's like, imagine you're going in the house, you want to turn off, you want to turn off the lights. How do you turn off the lights? You go from one room and switch the light, and the next room, switch off the light. Or you can go to the master breaker, what's it called? The circuit breaker, and you shut it. When the Yetzer Hara wants it, the Yetzer Hara, it can go local, or it can do a better job. All it has to do is get you to be sad. All it has to do is to take away your simcha and take away your excitement and then that's the circuit breaker, and then everything else. Then you're in bed, and then you're like, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. That's how the Yetzer Hara looks at you, because everything is easy once you don't have the energy to fight.
This is why Chabad has a lot of Farbrengen, to be in Simcha, to drink, to be in Simcha all the time.
That's one of the reasons for Farbrengen. What's interesting is, that a lot of times Farbrengens have a more serious, somber atmosphere, but the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that every Farbrengen has to end with dancing. In other words, we always have to leave an upbeat mood. You take on the world in an upbeat way. It's all about simcha. It's all about simcha. And again, it's not because simcha per se is important, but because simcha is the fuel that fuels everything in your avodas Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe brings down the pasuk, Tachas asher le'avadas Hashem aleikecha b'simcha v'tu levav. The Moshe, when describing all the catastrophes that would befall the Yidden over the many millennia of Galus, so Moshe Rabbeinu says, you know why this is all happening? Because he didn't have simcha. In other words, what was the original cause of everything? What caused you to fail? What caused you to do that Averis, which caused all the galus? It was all because you didn't have simcha.
That's the only source of simcha. So someone said before, there's a mitzvah to be b'simcha. Where is there such a mitzvah?
Nachman of Breslov.
Of course, for Nachman Breslov. Before Nachman Breslov. You stay in the Torah, you have to be b'simcha.
It's not nimne b'minyan atayag, but Ivdus Hashem b'simcha.
If you've never seen Simcha,
it's a pasuk in Tehillim.
It's not one of the entire.
Sorry?
It's not one of the entire.
It's not one of the entire mitzvah. But when you say something in the vernacular, it's a mitzvah. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's one of the entire mitzvahs.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that it's not one of the entire.
Yeah, but even in the Torah, the Tachas Shleivata Hashem Alekecha B'Simcha V'Tuv Leivav is clearly in the Torah.
You can learn pshat Tachas Shleivata Hashem Alekecha that your Iyavoidu was done b'simcha.
I'm aware of that, but that's not how the Rambam learns pshat. And Hilchas,
Most Rishonim don't learn like that.
and Nicholas Lulav, and the Arizal definitely doesn't learn pshat like that. But you're right, there are those who have different pshat in it. The Arizal actually has a very extreme pshat in it. But the Rambam Beferish learns that way. Yeah.
yeah, if you've never seen, they say if one has never seen Simchas Beis HaShoeva in their lifetime, they've never seen. If they haven't seen Simchas Beis HaShoeva, they've never seen Simcha in their lifetime. Does that make sense? If you didn't see Simchas Beis HaShoeva, you've never seen Simcha.
It doesn't mean that we can't be b'simcha. The pasuk in Tehillim, Yidus Hashem b'simcha, definitely applies even to people who have not been by Simchas Beis HaShoeva. But it means there's a certain level of simcha that was reached by Simchas Beis HaShoeva that if you weren't there, you couldn't have experienced. But that doesn't mean that we can't experience simcha whatsoever. Okay.
What's the definition of simcha?
What is the definition of simcha? That's a great question. It's a great question, and we are right now currently in a review of the prakim. So I don't want to take too much time, but let's suffice it with this. Number one definition of simcha, which is what we'll be talking about today, and then in 3 weeks from now we'll talk about another definition. But today, the definition of simcha is that you're not upset, you're not sad.
The opposite.
That you're not bogged down, you're not emotionally weighed down. In other words, this is not about being in a positive space, but the first thing to get to be besimcha is you have to get out of a negative space. Then what is simcha? We'll get to that B'yat Hashem in 3 weeks from now. Yeah.
I was just staying in my head here that it seems to me that like clarity is like underneath simcha. And when you have clarity and things are clear, it brings simcha, it brings it all. It brings success in Avodas Hashem, and the obstacle in Avodas Hashem usually, oftentimes, is just lack of clarity, like what to do, what is actually the Nefesh Elokis, what is the Nefesh Bahamis, what's coming from what. But if everything was very clear, and you knew 1 + 1 is 2, very simple,
That's why Torah is light. Torah sheds light. Yeah. No, you're saying you bring a very, very valid point. Now, so step number 1, as mentioned, you want to be besimcha, you can't be a basket case. You can't be upset, you can't be sad, you can't be worried, because all these things impede our ability to be besimcha.
It would seem to me, right, that it's something to be said, right? But anger is the dangerous emotion, right? Because when one is angry, they say not nice things to one another, right? They start dominating over one another, right? They wind up in a fight, they win a battle.
That it would seem that way to you, but the Alter Rebbe respectfully disagrees.
Blind, they can't see the ways of the world.
No, but the Alter Rebbe respectfully disagrees. And in fact, anger is not mentioned in Tanya. It's mentioned later in the 4th Sefer of Tanya. Not discussed. Here the Alter Rebbe is talking about sadness and the toxicity of sadness. So, and for the reasons explained before. So the problem is that to be happy, you can't be sad. And you can't be, it's not really sad. All these, I mean, sad is like a general word that includes all the negative, the range, the spectrum of negative emotions that people experience, and you got to pull yourself out of that in order to be able to experience true simcha.
And now they cannot give a nevuah if it's not in simcha.
That's true.
We learn from Yaakov Avinu.
We're gonna get to that later. But that's easy said. That's easy said. The question is, how do we not worry? How do we not be sad? How do we not be upset? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that's what the Rebbe talks about in Prakim Chavav, Chavzayin, Chavches. The Rebbe starts, and these prakim are very rich and very detailed, and obviously this is an overview, so we're not going to, the point of the overview is more of a chazara. We're not going to be able to go into any one of these ideas fully, but we'll try to do it as best as we can. The first thing that comes to mind when we talk about worries and things that make us sad and upset are material issues. Bani, as the Rebbe says, Bani chayim ezena, issues that we have with children. Some people don't have children. Though some people who have children have nebach, have issues with their children. That's one. Chaye is life and health. And then there's mezona, which is sustenance, livelihood, money, financial. So how does a person who is suffering in one of these areas, a person who's experiencing difficulty in one of these areas, how do you maintain the simcha despite all this? So the Alter Rebbe is going to invoke a very basic idea in Yiddishkeit, the idea of gamzu l'toiva, the understanding that there's no such thing as something that's bad that happens to me, but rather there are only two possibilities. When something happens to me, it can be either something which is good in a revealed way, or there's something which is good in a non-revealed way. But everything that Hashem does is for the good, right? And Alter Rebbe explains this in using Kabbalistic language. So those things that happen to us that are revealed good, they come from what's called Alma Disgalia, the revealed world. Those things that come to us that are not revealed good, they come from the Alma Diskasia, the hidden world. And very quickly and very briefly, what that means is that Hashem relates to us on two levels. He relates to us on our terms, and He relates to us on His terms. When He relates to us on our terms, that's called Alma Desgalia. That is the level of Hashem that is revealed to us, that we can relate to. On the other hand, when Hashem relates to us on His terms, that's Alma Diskasya, that's hidden from us. We can't really comprehend Hashem on that level. Then what we are going to experience is not something that we will appreciate as good. Why? Because it is so good that it is beyond our comprehension of what good is. So it's not only that there are two different types of ways that we experience, or that Hashem interacts with us, and they're both good, but actually one is greater than the other. When a person suffers, and not that we want suffering, but in hindsight, when a person suffers, he has to know that that is such a great good, that is such an incredible good, and that is a greater closeness to Hashem, and it is because of that reason that we can't experience it for what it is, because it's too great for us to experience. And as we spoke at length, when we taught this Perek, an example of a parent and a child, a parent and a very young child, the greatest good things that the parent does for the child doesn't appreciate. Why doesn't the child appreciate it? Because the child is on such a low intellectual level, it cannot, it's stuck in this moment right now and totally just very sensory and tactile. The greatest good that a child can imagine is a candy. And the fact that the parents go to work for it every single day and take it to the doctor and make sure that it's healthy and put it to bed every single day and care for it. The candy, that's the most amazing thing my parent does for me, is that he gives me a candy. And that's to us also. The candies are those things that we can appreciate in life. And all those other things, including those things that sometimes are painful to us, those are also Hashem's kindness. And those are also far good, but not, the word also is maybe a misnomer over here. It's not also. Those are actually a much greater good than that which we experience as good. So with that, the Alter Rebbe says, anything that happens to me in the physical realm, and obviously this is easily said, it's not so easily done. It's a lifetime of work. It's a lifetime of reprogramming ourselves and getting used to thinking in a certain way, thinking about the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, thinking about how Hashem loves us, and thinking about how everything that happens comes from Hashem, even when it hurts and even when it's painful. But ultimately, the solution to all material issues and problems, again, those things that happen to us, is contemplating this idea of Gamazul L'Toiva, and contemplating this idea of the Alma, the Iskasya element, how everything that comes from Hashem is kindness. And with that behind us, the end of Perek Chavav, the Alter Rebbe says, if you look on page Lamed Gimel, 4 lines from the bottom, Ach, says the Alter Rebbe, however, Ha'atzlus Mamili Dishmaya, if a person is bothered and upset about heavenly matters, Sarich Lashis Eitzeis Benafshei Lipater Mimena, that's tough stuff. Whatever happens to me, whatever Hashem does to me, that's good. But what about my spiritual state? What if I'm upset about my spiritual state? That would seem to be a legitimate reason to be upset. I can't blame this on Hashem and say it's some sort of hidden good in Alma Diskasya. This is.
We're so involved in the Gashmias, the Gavelt, right, that we forget that we're wrapped up with Hashem, like we're wrapped up in a talus or something, right? We forget. So Hashem has to remind us of it, and sometimes He has to take serious steps to remind us, whether it's a chronic illness or getting hurt or something. That sounds so drastic. I mean, those things would sound inappropriate or eccentric, right? But Hashem is bringing it about, and one experiences it, So it's to remind us how we're wrapped into His talus.
You're right now. You're entering, Hashem's cheshbonos, Hashem's calculations. We believe b'emunah that whatever happens for the good. Now you're saying it's good because it's for this reason, it's good for the other reason. I don't know. That's Hashem's calculations. Hashem's calculations. But right now we're moving to a different topic. Right now we're moving to the topic of when a person is upset over spiritual matters. And the Alter Rebbe is going to break it down into 3 different categories. But the third category is somewhat of a subset of the second category. So let's discuss the first 2 categories. When I'm upset about my spiritual state, I can be upset about two things. Either about something that I've done, an avera that I've done, a mistake that I've made, bad choices that I've made in my life. That's number one. And number two, I could be upset not about something that happened in the past, but about my current lowly spiritual state and my character flaws and the fact that I'm just not happy with who I am. That's how the Alter Rebbe is going to break it down. So here in Perek Chavav, the Alter Rebbe begins with a person who's upset over an avera that he has done. And perhaps it's not a small avera, as the Alter Rebbe says, it could be even daigis avonis chamurim. A person could have done a terrible avera. And in such an instance, technically speaking or theoretically speaking, sadness is the correct response. And in fact, if you're not sad about that, what does that say about you?
You have no regret.
You have no regret. And the essence of tshuva, or at least a part of the essence of what tshuva is charat ala avar. So if you're sad about something you've done wrong, or about something you've not done right enough, that would seem to be a very justified sadness. But the key word over here is seen, because that's wrong. That's wrong. And this is very important, you say, the very important idea. Dr. Rebbe says, yes, sadness is justified. And the sadness, you have to be sad over what you've done. But not now. Going to the Yisoid Dr. Rebbe lays down earlier, to the principle Dr. Rebbe lays down, is that to serve Hashem, you have to be happy. If you're not happy, you're not going to win the battle. It doesn't make a difference why you're not happy. It's possible that your sadness is justified. It's possible that you're sad that you didn't avera. The problem is that what's going to be the result of that sadness?
More trouble.
The sadness saps you of your simcha, of your vitality, of your energy, and you won't be able to now fight the Yetzer Hara and beat the Yetzer Hara. Therefore, even when sadness is called for, it has to be in a controlled environment. And this is a very important thing. When a Yid is sad, even if the sadness is, obviously when we're talking about when the sadness is legitimate and appropriate and called for, sadness never controls you. You always control the sadness. Which means you decide when it's going to be, and you limit it a certain amount of time. That's the time when you're sad, and the rest of the day you are besimcha, and you do not entertain any thoughts that are going to drag you down, or any thoughts, and it doesn't make a difference. And by the way, when you say an avera, it doesn't make a difference when you did it. You could have done a horrible avera 2 minutes ago. Avonis chamuris, because 2 minutes ago, or 2 years ago, or 20 years ago, doesn't make a difference. They're all in the past. They're all not now, right? Whatever happened, happened. You can't change what happened. I mean, there's tshuva, but you can't change it. So, can you imagine a person that does an avera, terrible avera, 2 minutes later, you find he's all happy, he's all besimcha. It smells wrong, but that's what Alter Rebbe wants. Alter Rebbe says, no, he doesn't want you to do an avera. But if chas v'shalom, a person does do an avera, and then afterwards catches himself feeling bad about it, you should know that's the Yetzer Hara. Now is not the time. When? I will establish a time tonight by Krishma Shalom Mita. And this is foundation number one. Foundation number one is you have to control your sadness. Sadness never controls you. Your entire day, you're davening, you're learning, and everything you do, your work has to be besimcha. You did something wrong, Krishma Shalom Mita, you spend afterwards 10-15 minutes, you'll be sad, you'll cry, you'll think about it, you'll beat yourself up a bit, but that's it. And then you move on with simcha weiter. And this is so important because we have to understand just how critical simcha is in our life. So that's foundation number one. So any time, practically speaking, any time of the day, when suddenly a thought comes to your head, oh my gosh, I did X, or I didn't do Y, and you start feeling bad, the moment you catch such a thought, you take that thought, you throw it out of your head and you say, now is not the time. And if you really want, you take a piece of paper or you put a note on your phone, and I'll get back to it later, but right now I have to be besimcha. And that's even when you're davening. right? It's all, davening. So the middle of davening, oh, but I did that bad thing. So you start feeling bad, and you feel holy that you're feeling bad. Yeah, you're feeling holy about it because that's no, it's not holy. It's not good. It's not right. Now davening has to be b'simcha. Ivdu as Hashem, and davening is avodah, right?
But al chet.
B'simcha. Okay, vidu during davening. Okay, during al chat you can be sad, but Psuki de Zimra and Krishma and Birchas Krishma and Shemona Esrei. It has to be with an incredible simcha over the fact that you're davening to Hashem. It's not the time to be sad. So that's principle number one. Principle number two. Most of the time, when we have thoughts of sadness and regret over things that we have done bad, the issue isn't only that the timing is bad. The issue is that the thought itself is completely illegitimate. So remember, principle number one, timing, right? Whenever you're sad, it has to be at a designated time. Time that you designate. You're in control. Issue number two is not anymore about timing. But that most of the time, when you are sad or feeling sad, or you have a thought that comes to your head, a depressing thought about something you have done wrong, it is not only that it's a bad time, but it's a bad thought. And that is because a true regret, someone who truly regrets an Avera, it only can come as a result of a closer relationship that you're sharing with Hashem. If you are the same person who did the Avera, then you're not really regretting the Avera. The only way you can truly regret is if you've changed. As we spoke about this at length. It's not regret that leads to change. It's change that leads to regret. Because if you're the same person, let's say yesterday you missed mincha. Today I missed mincha. Why are you upset? Yesterday you missed mincha, it was fine. What happened today that it's not fine? What changed? You didn't change, you're the same person. So the regret isn't real. The only thing, and that's why, by the way, most of the time, what happens the next day?
Same thing.
What? You miss mincha again. And you know what the funny thing is? Do you know why you miss mincha again the next day?
You didn't change.
You never regret
Because he was regretting.
So one way to say it is because you didn't change, but there's another thing. Your sadness over the fact that you didn't daven mincha led you to not your sadness over the fact that you didn't daven mincha led to you not davening mincha today because you were sad and depressed and had no energy. So not only doesn't this sadness lead you to any place productive, it's actually going to make you worse. It's going to make you do the same thing again. And this is because this what you said earlier about clarity. This period of Tanya is the biggest. I once had when I was in camp a 1,000,000 candle power flashlight. This period is a 1,000,000 candle power flashlight in terms of providing clarity. Because the biggest, you want to be sad. That's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but I'm saying is sometimes you do things that are wrong. The biggest problem is that when we're sad and we think it's holy. That's not clarity.
But the gate that
That's not clarity. We need We need to have. In other words, I'm sad and I know this is wrong. Okay, so I continue to be sad. But you know what? As long as I know it's wrong, eventually I'll move beyond that. I'll move past that because I realize it's a bad thing. The problem is that most people are walking around being sad, which is the most destructive and toxic emotion it is. It's getting them to do more Averis, and they're feeling holy about their sadness. They're feeling that they're great people because they're sad they did an Avera. The sadness is poison. Not only because the timing is wrong, because it's not real. It's not real. You didn't change. You're going to do the same thing again. Real sadness has to be a result of a change, a new awareness, a new connection to Hashem. So if you're davening, if you're learning, and if your nefesh elikis is activated, you're feeling close to Hashem, and that's when you feel sad. That's great. That sadness is legitimate, because that's sadness that comes, regret that's a result of change. But here, now then we only have the first issue, which is timing. The timing is not right now, later. But if you're feeling sad, it's the middle of the day, you're in the middle of shopping, you're in the middle of walking, you're in the middle of working, sadness, it's not only the timing. It is toxic. The actual sadness is totally toxic. It's selfish. It's not about Hashem, which is why usually when you think, I didn't daven mincha, what are you thinking? Oy, I did an avera against Hashem? No. What are you thinking? I'm such a loser. It's self-defeating. It's selfish. And instead, so what we have to do is we have to correct all of this, which means that after Kishvan Shalamita, that's the right time. What do you do then? So the words of the Alter Rebbe, as he says, Yisboinen, at that time, if you look in page 66, the first word in the line is Ledaigus, around a third of the way up, down from the top. He says, Rak Lazois Tzarech Kvius Itim V'Shas HaKosher, for this, for the sadness, you need to establish a time, the proper time, B'Yishav Adas, no cell phones, no kids crying, right? With a relaxed atmosphere. And what is the first thing that you do? Okay, I need to feel sad. How do you feel sad? Imagine I tell you, you did an avera, feel sad. What should you think about? So what do you usually think about? What do you think about? No?
Loser you are.
What?
What kind of a loser you are.
Okay, loser you are. How bad avera was now. So what does Alter Rebbe say? What are the next words?
Great God is.
The thing is, bigdulas Hashem asher chatalei. Think about the greatness of Hashem against whom you sinned. Radical. Most of us don't.
You want to shut the reader off? Excuse me.
Most of us don't think of regret in this way. We don't think about it in terms of thinking about Hashem. It's thinking about how terrible we are and terrible our averos are. But no, that's not real. Think about the greatness of Hashem. Think about the greatness of Hashem and build a relationship with Hashem. And then you realize, Asher Chotalei, I've sinned against Hashem.
The gate of tears constantly remain open. Can crying be eccentric?
That was a question?
Yeah. If the gate of tears are constantly is always open, the gate of tears, all right. So can crying be wrong?
Yeah.
The gate of tears is constantly open. The gate of tears, you can cry any time. And you'll always be answered.
It's almost like an opposite Torah that we're learning right now. He's saying that some of the
That's
gate of
Meridos.
tears.
That's Meridos. The difference between opposite
The Baal Shem Tov said, there's some amazing letter. The Baal Shem Tov was really the one who revolutionized the from world with happiness and the importance of happiness. And he said that if Shari Demoyis Leninalu, if the gates are not locked, in other words, that tears open up the gates. So he says, Simcha absolutely pulverizes the gates. That's what he said.
Wow.
It's,
If the gates are not, say that again? I missed it.
he says, tears open up the gates. Simcha pulverizes the gates. There's a right time for everything, and there's a right time for tshuva, and there's a right, and obviously if a person's in pain and needs to daven to Hashem, there's a place for tears. But imagine if a person is sitting with the whole Simchas Torah and crying, and he says, Shari T'moyis Leininalu, that's obviously, it's out of place, and that's wrong. In other words, there's a time and place for everything. Serving of Hashem has to be besimcha. That's a pasuk in Tehillim, that's not Tanya. Ivdu es Hashem besimcha. Tachatz shliavatas Hashem lekecha besimcha. Is there time for tears? Yeah. And are tears effective in the right time? Absolutely. But that's not the regular avodah. So again, this is a pedic which we can't. It's difficult to run through this pedic. We're doing an overview. We're supposed to do another 2 prakim. We have 15 minutes left, but it's difficult to run through a pedic which is so powerful and so relevant. So in terms of, because we all fall into this trap of being sad, and the problem isn't being sad, as mentioned, but then thinking that it's a good thing. That's they say, Yediyah samach lachatz yirufua. You ever heard the expression? If you know this, you know the illness, that's half the cure. Because once you know the illness, then But if you don't know the illness, and what if you think the illness is not only it's not an illness, you think that it's
It's a remedy.
it's a remedy, right? And that's people walk around feeling sad and they think it's kedusha and it's klipa. There's a vart, I don't know if I said it back then. The Gemara says that Hua Yitzhahara, Hua Satan, Hua Malach HaMavas. So there's a Siddush vart in that. Hua Yitzhahara. The first thing it does is it's the Yitzhahara, gets you to do an Avera. The next thing is, it's the same one. It turns around, puts on a different hat. Now it's the Satan. It comes and the Satan, it starts laughing at you. And it starts criticizing you. You did that Avera, you terrible person, you awful person. That's the same one that 10 minutes ago got you to do that Avera. Right now it's critiquing you and killing you for doing that Avera. Hua Malach HaMavas, and that's what kills you. It's not the Avera that's going to kill you. It's the sadness that follows that's going to kill you. Avera you can recover from. That's what the Baron Karliner says, right? An Avera you can recover from. You do tshuva. But if you're sad, you can't recover. I mean, you can recover from the sadness, but as long as you're sad, there's nothing, you're in the clutches. You're in the clutches. There should be simcha. Okay, so that is regards anything we've done, Yisoid. Number one, you did something wrong, timing. Don't add number one. Number two is also be careful to know exactly the nature of the sadness you're feeling. Now we move to Perek Chav Zayin, which is what if you're not upset about something that you've done, but you're upset about who you are. You look in the mirror, and you're not happy.
Why?
You tell me, why aren't you happy when you look in the mirror?
You look like a loser.
Everyone has their own answer to that question. What?
You look like a loser, that's why.
You look like a loser, okay? Talking to me?
Is it possible that one is not happy when they look at themselves in the mirror because they know that they don't even fulfill a third of their potential? Like the average person today doesn't really fulfill a third of their potential, and yet the one thinks that they're better than the next person, the striver and everything. All right, so they're thinking to themselves, "This has even happened to me." I haven't fulfilled all that I can fulfill. I haven't done everything from A to Z. I haven't accomplished everything I could.
No, because that we talked about in the last period. That is being sad about something you did do or didn't do. In other words, bad choices you made in the past. We already dealt with that. That's sadness which has to be relegated at certain times and be dealt with appropriately. This period is not about anything that I've done in the past. I don't like who I am in the present. Meaning, I look in the mirror and I see a person who's selfish, filled with temptations,
Not successful.
egotistical, lazy, all the character, the whole bouquet, whole kaleidoscope of gifts that Hashem has given me. I think we all can relate to this. And if only I didn't. Bottom line is, sometimes we feel like a hamster on a wheel, right? A hamster on a wheel, struggling and trudging through the mud. And that can be demoralizing. I don't know if the word sad is maybe the appropriate word over here, but it definitely impedes our ability to be besimcha. It can be demoralizing. The daily grind of having to deal with all our issues and all our flaws and all our, we're all gebenched. Hashem gave each one of us our own unique, recipe, mixture of, what? Our own pekala, right. So that's the topic of Perek Chav Zayin. And the Perek Chav Zayin, which is also an extremely foundational Perek, the Alter Rebbe, he redefines our purpose in life. He really does that. The reason why we're so upset with our character flaws that we have to struggle with is because we feel that the struggle is useless and pointless. What if the struggle wasn't useless? What if the struggle wasn't pointless? In other words, you go to Yid and you ask him, what is your purpose here in this world? What's he going to answer? What's your purpose? Sasson, what's your purpose in this world?
To do chasadim.
To do chesed, very good. And to serve Hashem, okay. Do you have to struggle to do chesed?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, very good. Do you have to struggle to serve Hashem? If you say sometimes, I'm going to be in awe of you. I always have to struggle to serve Hashem. Okay, you're a half tzaddik already. Okay, most people we have so good. So your purpose is to do chesed and to serve Hashem. Right? What's your purpose in this world, Reuven?
What he said.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Okay, you have to struggle to do chesed.
Sure, 100%.
Struggle to serve Hashem.
All the time.
What's the point of the struggle? If your purpose and mission here in this world is to do chesed and to serve Hashem, then the struggle, all the struggle does is it makes it more difficult for you to do your purpose.
It impedes your
Makes
purpose.
it what?
It impedes your
It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. If I didn't have to struggle, I'd be able to do chesed, but so much more chesed, serve Hashem so much more.
Easier.
So what's the
What's the purpose? So it could demoralize you. All the struggling demoralizes you.
Feel unaccomplished.
Yeah, and the same thing. All of these things that get in the way of me doing my purpose, my anger, my laziness, my temptations, all these things that I have to battle is all energy expended for nothing. If I didn't have all these beautiful gifts that Hashem decided to give me, right? My anger management issue, my laziness, my ego, my pettiness, my stinginess, all these things, then how much easier would it be for me to do my mission in life? Comes along Dr. Rebbe and says, you got it all wrong. You think you're a tzaddik. Because you know why? A tzaddik's job in this world is to do chesed and to serve Hashem. That's not your job. You know what your job is? To struggle. Think about that.
That's counterproductive.
Says,
how would that be a job? Well, how could that? It's a
because
contradiction in terms.
let's put it this way. Let's put it this way.
What is the purpose?
You going to daven. Let's say that. You have to struggle to daven properly. What gives Hashem nachas? Most people think that davening gives Hashem nachas. The struggle was a waste of time. I want you to know that Hashem gets more nachas from your struggle than from your davening. Why are you davening? 1 second. Why are you davening? To give Hashem nachas. Your struggle is giving Hashem more nachas.
How's that? Because you're forced.
The way Hashem created us, the way Hashem created the world with a balance of kedusha and klipa. And 1 second. And you know what? I'm trying to. It's like you ever saw. I still remember. 1990, the first time I was there by Lag BaOmer prayed. But anyone here by Lag BaOmer prayed by the Rebbe?
Where?
What? Lag BaOmer prayed by the Rebbe.
Oh yeah.
So they had these huge signs which they made. Now today everything is made by machine, but back then, so they had this big room. I remember I was there, I was a young boy, and I was blown away by how it was done. Someone would draw something on a piece of paper this big. They put it in like a machine, like a projector type machine. It was up against a huge piece of paper, and people would go and paint in the right. But it started like this big. Right? There's kedusha, huge kedusha, unlimited kedusha, unlimited klipa. That's the way Hashem created everything. Zelu mazeh, right? And then there's kedusha and klipa. You, the nafshel kis, the nafshel mahamis, right? You are that little thing that controls the whole kedusha and klipa. Every time you struggle with your nafshel mahamis and you knock it down, you suppress it, you are causing that in the entire cosmic reality of everything, klipa gets pushed down, which means that a huge amount of divine energy is released. And Hashem, this gives Hashem more nachas than anything. But if you were only to know what you were accomplished when you were struggling, it wouldn't bother you. Again, the problem is that the story.
So the accomplishment is not the ikka, it's the struggle.
It depends for a second. What were you saying?
When I see my children struggling, that does not bring me nachas. It does not. So I can't, from my own experience, I cannot relate to what you've said.
You're not HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's why.
What's
HaKadosh Baruch Hu is different.
So that's a different. That's a different.
No, but what you're saying is incorrect. I'm not going to talk about you. I don't know you. I don't know your children. In a normal situation, a parent whose child is struggling gives the parent tremendous nachas. Imagine, let me finish. A parent who's not getting nachas with the children because the children are losing the struggle. It's not the struggle that's not giving nachas. So, for example, imagine a parent who has two children. One is a straight A student, and everything is easy, and good. Kid comes home with report cards, A's and everything, right? That's nachas, right? Imagine this same parent has another child, and that child doesn't get straight A's. It's everything, and this kid comes home, and maybe not A's and everything, but gets B's and everything instead. But the kid worked mighty hard for it. You know what? There's a certain nachas in there that's more than the nachas in the other kid. More than the nachas of the other kid. That's the nachas. And Hashem created two types of people in this world. He created tzaddikim, and He created strugglers. And when you look at yourself, and the job of a tzaddik, as mentioned, is Torah mitzvahs. If you can be a tzaddik, that's amazing, that's great. But most people can't be tzaddikim. The rest of us, the Eibishter put us down here, and our job is to struggle. And the Alter Rebbe brings down the pasuk. And let's do this inside. Okay. I wanted to do inside a bunch of lines. Page Lamed Daled, 5 lines from the bottom. Ushnei minei nachas ruach lefanav yisbarach lamayla. There are 2 different types of nachas that Hashem gets. Echad, one, mibitl la sitra achra legamri, the absolute destruction of the sitra achra v'yishabcha, and the transformation memiriru lemiska, from bitterness to sweetness, umachasheichel and from darkness to light. And this happens through Ayidei Tzaddikim. That's what a tzaddik does. Vashenis, but there's a second type of nachas Hashem gets, and that is Kadiskafya Sitra Achra. When the Sitra Achra is not destroyed, but it's suppressed, while it's still at full strength. It lifts itself up like an eagle. In other words, like our Yetzer Hara, it's at full strength and it's like full of ego. However, Hashem brings down the klipa, and it is through the work of the Beinanis. The Beinani struggle that again causes the cosmic suppression of klipa. This is what the pasuk says. Yitzchak tells Esav, "Make for me delicacies as I like them." Matamim lashon rabim. The word matamim is in the plural, delicacies. Yitzchak didn't tell Esav, make me a delicacy. He says, make me delicacies. Why? Because there are 2 different types of delicacies, 2 different types of pleasure. These words, make for me delicacies as I like them, the Tikkun Ezer says, these are the words that the Shechina Hashem says to her children, which is to Klal Yisrael. Just like when it comes to physical delicacies. There are 2 different types of delicious foods. Echad, one of them, foods that are delightful and delicious and sweet. That's one type of pleasure. Vasheni, the second, from sharp and tart foods. Rakshim to volume sukanim hativ, they're spiced well, achanasu madanim lahashav nefesh, to the point that they become delicacies that restore the soul. There's cake, there's chocolate cake. Hashem's chocolate cake is tzaddikim. That's his ice cream. Sweet avodah v'tzaddik. There's no bitterness, there's no salt, there is no pepper in it. It's all sweetness, all love and fear and everything. And then there is the avodah of the strugglers. You know what our avodah? Our avodah isn't sweet. Our avodah is, it has a little anger in it, and a little pettiness, and a little ego in it, and a little all these things like salt and pepper. They don't taste good. But when we struggle against them and lift off of them and serve Hashem, we are the Eibishter's entree. We're His main dish. This is the pleasure that Hashem gets from our struggle. And the problem, the struggle demoralizes us only if we don't appreciate its value. There's the mashal, which I'm pretty sure that I said back in the time when we taught this Perek about this prisoner who was in prison 25 years, and he was made to turn this very heavy wheel. And whenever he asked, what is this? He was told there's a mill behind there, and you're turning the mill, and from this there's water and flour for the whole village behind it. He worked 8-9 hours a day, very, very difficult. The day after he was released, after 20-25 years, he goes to the other side of the wall, and he sees what's there? Garnish, nothing. Couldn't take it. Had a heart attack and he died.
Wasn't afraid that the Rabbi in prison or something, for was it 25 years or so that he was in prison right for something or other?
We're going to finish off and I'll answer you in private, okay? What happened? What devastated the person?
The belief that he had.
You could work very hard as long as you believe that as long as the work is purposeful, it's fine. But when work isn't purposeful, in halacha, it's called avodas perach. Avodas perach. It says that you're not allowed to use an eved ivri. The safed by befarach. What does it mean that you're not allowed to make him work? Befarach is like back-breaking labor. What does that mean? We're not allowed to tell him to take a heavy stone from no, that's allowed. What's avodas perach? The Rambam says, I'm not allowed to tell him, cook for me a cup of hot water if I'm not interested in it. In other words, work which is purposeless. That's avodas perach. Avodas perach is work which has no purpose.
Perach.
It's the Gemara, I know that. No purpose. I can make my eved, I can make my servant work very hard. I can't tell him to do even a simple task if it has no purpose, because there's nothing more difficult than doing a task which is purposeless. The Nazis, they would make the Yidden just carry rocks up and down, right? That's the height, the most cruel thing. And the Mitzrayim did the same thing. They made the Yidden build the cities, even though that they were going to come crumbling down. If we view our struggles as perach, if we view it as purposeless, why do I have to struggle against all my character flaws? Then life is very difficult and we can't be besimcha. But if we realize it's not purposeless at all, every single one of these character flaws that I have is a gift from Hashem, and this is the way I serve Him and I give Him pleasure, then we can be simcha despite all these flaws and despite all the struggles. We can be simcha. Why? So when you wake up in the morning and you have a difficult time, and it's not easy to daven, you have to struggle, and you go daven, don't only be happy that you daven, be happy that you struggled. That's a mind shift. Be happy, understanding how much pleasure the Eibishter received from the fact that you didn't want to daven. So the fact that you don't want to daven, is that a bad thing? No. That's a great thing. That's how you give pleasure to Hashem. If you wanted to daven, then you'd be a tzaddik. But we're more than that. We're strugglers, and we get to give Hashem this extra nachas. We not only give to Hashem the gift of our davening, we even give to Hashem also the gift of our struggles, and that's something that we can take great simcha in.
Sheva ipol tzaddik v'kam.
Yeah.
Struggle, and get
Yes. Anyways, we got a little carried away. We didn't finish everything we're supposed to. So I guess next time we meet, which is going to be not next week, because next week there's a Farbrengen with a wonderful guest speaker, who I know personally, and I think he's going to do a wonderful job. But the week after that, we'll finish the end of Perek Chav Zayin and then move on from over there.
Okay, now.